In this episode, we turn our attention to the Supreme Court's landmark ruling involving Byju's case that delves deep into the nuances of insolvency law and the use of inherent judicial powers under the IBC. Welcome back to We Listen, your go-to source for an in-depth analysis of key legal developments in the field of insolvency law. The Byju's case revolves around the settlement of insolvency proceedings before the COC was constituted, raising critical questions about the interplay between Rule 11 of the NCLAT rules and the procedural safeguards of Section 12A of the IBC and Regulation 30A of the CIRP regulations. The judgment challenges the extent to which inherent powers can be invoked in a process governed by strict statutory protocols. Let's start with the withdrawal mechanism under the IBC. As per Section 12A of the IBC, which was introduced way back in 2018, any withdrawal can be allowed only with the approval of 90% of the voting share of the COC. Now, this framework is reinforced by Regulation 30A of the CIRP regulations, which outlines the specific procedural requirements to ensure transparency and collective decision making. However, when a withdrawal is contemplated even before the constitution of the COC, the procedure differs slightly. Right? In such a case, the applicant creditor must submit the withdrawal application through the interim resolution professional in the prescribed form FA. Now, this form has to be routed through the IRP, wherein the IRP is required to present the application to the NCLT within 3 days of receipt of the withdrawal application in form FA. Now, it is at that stage that the NCLT examines the applications, considers all the relevant factors, and it may either approve or reject the withdrawal application. But in this present case of Byju's, the NCLAT stayed the constitution of the COC and it further went ahead and allowed the settlement proposed by the Byju's promoter to BCCI. Surprisingly, based on this settlement, the NCLAT went a step further and set aside the NCLT's order admitting the company into insolvency using its inherent powers under Rule 11 of the NCLAT rules. Now, this was what was challenged before the Honorable Supreme Court. The Honorable Supreme Court scrutinized the NCLAT's use of Rule 11, which provides tribunals inherent powers to pass orders for justice and prevent abuse of process. But here's the catch. These inherent powers are not a substitute for statutory procedures. The court emphasized this point in paragraph 77 to 81 of its order, wherein the Supreme Court delivered a strong critique of how NCLAT handled the settlement in Byju's case. Firstly, the Supreme Court observed that Rule 11 cannot be used to bypass statutory procedures laid out in Section 12A of the Code and Regulation 30A of the CIRP regulations. Now, these provisions are not merely guidelines, right? The Supreme Court observed that these exist to ensure that withdrawals and settlements are handled transparently and equitably, especially given the collective nature of insolvency proceedings. The Supreme Court further highlighted the procedural lapses in this case by emphasizing the appropriate approach that would have been adopted by the NCLAT, which is nothing but to stay the constitution of the COC while simultaneously directing the parties to follow the statutory procedure laid out under Section 12A. Instead, what the NCLAT did was that it relied on affidavits and assurances provided by the party to approve the settlement without a formal withdrawal application being filed through the interim resolution professional. The interim resolution professional under the law plays a crucial role in processing and presenting such applications to the NCLT for approval. Right? By bypassing this process, the NCLAT undermined the procedural safeguards designed to protect the integrity of insolvency proceedings. Having observed so, the Honorable Supreme Court had set aside the order passed by the Honorable NCLAT, thereby commencing the process of CIRP against Byju's. Now, this order of the Honorable Supreme Court reaffirmed that procedural safeguards are not optional. Rule 11 of the NCLAT rules, while providing inherent powers, cannot override statutory frameworks like Section 12A and Regulation 30A, which are designed to balance the interests of all the stakeholders. Now, this Byju's ruling is more than a decision. It's a reaffirmation of the principles underpinning the IBC. As insolvency law evolves, cases like these shape how India approaches corporate distress and creditor rights. This ruling sends a clear message. Procedural safeguards in insolvency law are not negotiable. Thanks for tuning in to We Listen. Stay informed and join us next time for more insights into the legal landscape. Thank you.